Welcome to Rev Up Your Potential with Hilda Gann, the stories about entrepreneurs, business leaders, and HR professionals and their successes and struggles along their journey. In this podcast, we also discuss the HR challenges that people face and the tips and strategies that have helped them. If you love to learn through storytelling, join us. Today, my guest is Katherine Burrows. She is the founder and CEO of Katherine Burrows Creative. And I'm delighted to have you here. You are a big impact ghostwriter. And I want people to know a little bit about you and your company. So share that with us, Katherine.
Sure. So I help purpose-driven experts make a bigger difference and get their big ideas into books and out into the world to multiply their impact and their profit. So I'm passionate about helping experts get their message out to improve lives, influence others, and even change the world.
And it's all through this ability to help people with their content. How did you end up getting into that business in the first place?
Well, I left my traditional office job in 2016 and wanted more flexibility and creativity in my career, and went back to my childhood love of writing. I always knew that I was called to write and called to help people. So I started to do copywriting because that's a good way to get paid for writing. And so I went to networking events back when we were doing in person. And we would be having these, the networking time, like not when there was a speaker, but when we could just socialize. And we'd be in groups of 4 or 5 people standing around chatting. And people would be telling these stories about, how they started their business or how they overcame a particular challenge. And I just kept thinking, like, people need to hear these stories. If people heard these stories, your phone would never stop ringing, your calendar would be booked, you'd have all the clients you want. But of course, these people are so humble and they never thought that they could, monetize their story. So nobody was hearing these stories. And I decided, like, that's my thing. I need to tell these stories and put them out in the world and connect people.
And I think that's sort of what I'm doing with my Rev Up Your Potential podcast. It's for people who love to learn through storytelling, because when we tell a story, first of all, we do connect with people, but the other thing is something you're sharing may help me to be better at something I'm doing. And what you're saying is that through storytelling, we as entrepreneurs can really share the essence of why we do what we do. And when we do that, then there's a connection there. Whereas when you say, oh, I do this, I do that, it's just a bunch of words. But when there's a story behind that, can you tell me more? You said there's this, I'm doing like your traditional office job. Were you doing writing? Did you take a degree in learning how to write? Or you said it started off as a childhood and you knew you wanted to be a writer. So can you connect the dot from over here to here? Because I feel like there's a missing chapter. Tell me the story.
Um, there might be a few books missing, not just chapters, but anyway, um, I did some fiction writing courses as a teenager, was really active in my high school creative writing club, and started to take university English and creative writing as a double major. Ended up leaving that for personal reasons. But once I got back to figuring out what I wanted to do, I wanted to go back to that. And in the meantime, I had done a diploma in business and marketing. So I knew all about brand stories and, finding the right keywords and all of that. But I really saw quite a disconnect between the way that storytelling is done in business marketing and the way that we think of literary storytelling. Those best-selling fiction books or the movies or the TV shows that we love to watch that they have these big epic stories with really well developed characters, and sometimes it spans generations, and sometimes it's in a different world. So really bringing all those elements of character and plot and setting into a brand story, I think makes it so much richer and so much easier for our prospects to connect with.
Do you often hear the passion when people are telling their stories versus when they're at a networking event and doing their 30-second elevator pitch?
For sure. Like I can think of, one person who's a real estate agent, and they can say, I'm a real estate agent. I sell real estate in, this area. And, if you're going to buy or sell a home, please call me. That doesn't really sound very different. But then she goes into, well, I really specialize in helping seniors downsize because I've been through it with my own parents, and I know that the challenges they face, and I can help with cleaning and getting rid of the excess stuff so that you can downsize into an apartment or a retirement home. And, I can help with all of that stuff. And then it really becomes a
Yeah.
story and very personal.
Even when you're saying that, like I can feel it here in my gut thinking, oh yeah, like, trying to part with what, 30, 50 years of memories into and then bring it down to an apartment, that's got to be a traumatic event. And wouldn't you like to have a real estate agent who gets it and who's helping do that? I know when we were talking earlier, you said, I first started my business by kind of subcontracting and writing assignments to help businesses, but then you made a shift. Tell us more about how you started and then when you shifted to this next level of your business.
Yeah. So I had been doing subcontracting, which means that another company was going out and getting those clients and doing all the marketing and then giving me an assignment. So that would be writing a blog or an email series or whatever it is. And that was great because it took a lot of pressure off of me in the beginning when I wasn't well known and stuff. But then I started to get some of my own clients who I corresponded with directly, whether in person or on Zoom or whatever. And I really found that those connections made a huge difference. I felt that the content I was writing for them was so much better, so much more accurate. It really portrayed the authentic person that I was writing about and the business that I was writing about because I had been able to listen to them speak directly. And I did get their passion for their business. And I heard them talk about what they do in their own words. And so then I was able to take that and bring that out into the world.
Great, great. It's what advice would you give to people who are just trying to write it themselves?
I get asked that a lot.
Well, that's why I'm asking it, to help everybody out there.
Really, what you need is an external perspective. Because if we think about the difference between how we speak about ourselves versus how other people speak about us. So if you think about, you're standing, let's say, in front of the mirror, and, the things that you're thinking in your head, that internal dialogue is often pretty critical. And, yes, physical appearance plays into it, but there's a lot of mental stuff, emotional stuff that we have negative self-talk around as well. Mm-hmm. Whereas, our closest friends, our significant others, those people that are really there to support us, they would never say those things about us. And they'd probably be upset at us for saying them to ourselves. So it's all about drawing on that external perspective. And of course, I would highly recommend working with a professional. But if you can't do that for one reason or another, start asking people. Ask those loved ones that you trust, that they'll tell you the truth. They're not worried about offending you or whatever. They'll tell you what those gifts are. Ask some of your current clients or your past clients. What did they really appreciate about you? What was the most helpful? Ask them what you could improve too, because that's also good information to have. And so that brings in that external perspective that you can weave into your writing.
And I think as individuals, we often don't kind of boast or brag, and we don't want to presume that our strengths are our strengths. So maybe that's why we're not good storytellers. And it sounds to me like when you're meeting with somebody, you listen, um, and you look for those kinds of deeper meanings about that person. Like I understand you have a kind of you're an intuitive person, and you have a perspective. Share a little bit about that. Like when somebody comes to you, okay, so if they're not a do-it-yourselfer and they haven't gone to the, well, Auntie May, tell me what you think of me or whatever. How do you help a person that you don't know find that core ability to tell that story so that they have that big impact as you are good at?
Well, I developed a process to do exactly that. I called my business character analysis. So when I'm onboarding a new client, I spend 60 to 90 minutes doing a really in-depth interview with them. And at the end of it, well, a couple days later, after I've had time to work on it, they'll get their defining characteristic, 3 supporting characteristics, and a culminating result. And so that's really all designed to be the foundation of everything that I write for them. And their personality traits, because the people that I work with, who they are is a really huge part of their brand. They're coaches, they're experts, they're consultants. So they're really selling themselves. And what I want to do is bring out those characteristics they have that are going to be the most benefit to their clients.
So briefly, could you give us an example? Because I'm trying to think what the culminating event might be. Personalities, those first 2, but the culminating event. So if you can briefly highlight an example of that would make it clearer.
The culminating result, what happens when all of those 4 characteristics work together. Okay. So, your defining characteristic might be driven, let's say. Okay. And then you could have supporting characteristics of creativity, insight, and like being detail oriented. So then the fact that you're driven is enhanced by the way that you creatively use those details to make the insights that serve your clients.
Okay. That's good.
That helps.
Well, I think because people will be saying, well, we'll give it, a little bit of an example might help, right? And giving some characteristics and say, okay, this is going to help this person because they're driven, they're detailed, so that you're going to get a product that looks like that as a result of that. I want to talk a little bit about human resources because that's one of my passions and fortes. And I know that recently you've brought on a couple of college placements to build your business, and it really probably has given you insight into how you're going to grow your people side of your business. Share a little bit about that experience with us, Katherine.
Yeah, so last year I had 1 placement student, but this year I decided to take on 3, and it's mostly because I found that 3 were 3 individuals who were a really good fit. So I have 1 that is helping me get all my internal processes and like my onboarding and stuff refined. I have 1 that is working on my marketing for Katherine Burrows Creative. And then I have 1 that's looking into publishing options and doing some research there. So they're doing 3 fairly different things, but they do overlap. Like we talk often about our ideal client personas, and so they're all using the same ideal client personas. But they've been able to bring a lot of energy, a lot of fresh perspective. They're marketing students. One of them is in 3rd year and the other 2 are 2nd year. So they're coming with just all of that new training, all of those best practices that are being taught freshly right now. And it's also given me experience compared to last year where I only had one student,
Mhm.
interacting just one-on-one to interacting in a team environment. So we've been having weekly team meetings. I've been teaching them about how to make motions to approve the agenda, to approve the minutes, and how we need to vote and record that the motion was carried, and how to create action items from the meeting, and then, how to report back and all of that stuff. Um, so I've been able to pass along some of my experience that way, but then they've also been giving me the insight of what works, what doesn't, because my experience was with a larger company. And then I've also had some experience with like volunteering for nonprofits and stuff, but I've never really had experience as a small business running a team. And that does, changes the story.
It does. Well, it does. And I can see a bit of a smile on your face, so it looks like it's been a positive experience this year.
Oh, for sure. Yes. Yes.
I loved how you say they come with a fresh perspective and ideas. And last year I had a marketing intern as well. And what I loved about it is that freshness of ideas. It keeps me thinking about where I can go. And they can do some things like from a technical, intuitive perspective, a lot easier and make recommendations based on that. And I find it so important that business owners, no matter what size of organization, really have to look at the individuals that they hire and tap into that uniqueness. That's part of my rev up concept. And what I love about the youth of today is that freshness of ideas. And it's so important that people get comfortable with all generations, all individuals. I remember talking to somebody who said, "That's it. That's it. I've had it." I mean, she had brought on an admin assistant role. A person was 25, and she was making concerns about the person wasn't engaged, they were not doing whatever. And she's, "I've had it. I'm not going to hire anybody, uh, any young people anymore." And I said, "How can you say that? That's just such a blanket statement. And where is the role that you play in educating and supporting and guiding and nurturing?" Because sometimes people don't even, if this is their first job, they don't even know what the expectations are. So that's one thing. And you just got to help them along. But as again, I love that freshness of idea. It keeps you thinking about what you need to do to keep it fresh. So I haven't talked to that person for a while, but I know she's hired more young people. So hopefully she's had more positive experiences. I'm so glad that you're having such a positive experience. What would you say is a piece of advice that you would give to your former self, um, having been through your journey, both in your career and now as an entrepreneur? What bit of advice would you give?
Um, Definitely get some coaching. And do it the sooner the better, because it really saves you a lot of time, energy, and money. I tried for a long time to figure out things myself, and it it takes a while. You're doing a lot of trial and error, and you're basically reinventing the wheel that someone else has already invented. And so when you can have that coach, and yes, you're paying some money for that, but um, you're really benefiting from that experience, that wisdom that they've accumulated. Like, one of my coaches has been in business for over 30 years. So she brings all of that 30 years, and I get to benefit from that without having to spend 30 years learning the same things.
I think the other thing that the coach does, and what you shared, is really wise. I think people who do invest in coach, really, it does make a difference. The one thing I find the coach does too is something that you can't do you without some help, is reflect on yourself and go through that journey of discovery to be that better version of yourself. And when you have a coach, that really does help. Because if you're trying to do that yourself and figure it out, it's like that storytelling, right? That we talked about at the beginning. You don't know how to boast about yourself. You don't necessarily know your strengths until somebody validates that for you. So the coach is like that person that's validating. As you speak it loud, you might discover something, or they may bounce something back onto you. When you decide to take it more easy and retire from what you're currently doing, what legacy would you like to have?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure I'll ever stop writing because I just love to do that. And I don't remember a time I wasn't writing. So I can't imagine a time in the future when I'm not writing. But as for retiring from work type writing, I really want to leave a legacy of a vast collection of books. I can't remember the name of the movie, but there was a movie I saw growing up where they were looking for this treasure. And of course, everyone was expecting it to be like this gold and these fancy jewels, and it was going to be worth a fortune and all this stuff. And in the end, when they found the treasure, it was actually these books and scrolls. And it was the knowledge that had been left behind by this lost civilization, not the material wealth. And that really impacted me because I thought, like that is value. That is treasure, those books, those stories, the experiences, the wisdom, things we've learned. And I really think that that's how we can pass those things along and make future generations better. And so that can be our nonfiction business books, our self-help books, and as well as the fictional stories, because we learn from fictional stories too.
Mm-hmm,
and I
mm-hmm.
think they do free us in a way that nonfiction doesn't, because, in nonfiction, you're so kind of focused on, well, how do I apply this to my real life? But in fiction, you can kind of just relax and enjoy the story. And those lessons just percolate through your subconsciousness when you're kind of not looking.
Well, everything you've kind of shared today really helps kind of validate that storytelling is impactful. Whether it's fiction, nonfiction, it really does help us to learn to be, human beings, to understand the struggles. We don't necessarily have to experience everything, but when we hear stories, they may impact us in a way that really enriches our lives for the better, either as lessons learned or as inspiration. So I really appreciate you coming today and sharing your knowledge and your wisdom, and especially your HR experience as you embark on building a team and enjoying that. What's next for you, Katherine, and how do people get a hold of you?
Well, I am working on a website refresh and my own book, because I have to remember to take time out of my schedule to write my own book in amongst other people's. And I'm doing some filming for a workshop in May. So that will be available as an online course. There's lots to come. And of course, I have my own podcast, The Right Connection. So I'll be continuing with that as well.
And how do people get a hold of you? What's the best way?
Oh, my website, KatherineBurrowsCreative.com would be the best place.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming on my show today and joining us. So I ask people, if you love the show, give it a thumbs up, give it a comment, and let us know how we're doing, and subscribe. If you love storytelling and you love to learn through storytelling about people's entrepreneurial journey and about human resources, join us on Rev Up Your Potential with Hilda again. Thanks for coming, and thanks for joining us. And thank you, Katherine, again for coming today.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to Rev Up Your Potential with Hilda Gann. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our podcast on YouTube and Spotify to stay up to date on our latest episodes. For HR tips, news, and strategies, or if you're interested in being a guest on our podcast, visit our website at peoplebrightconsulting.com.